A bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking because its trust is not on the branch, but on its own wings. Always believe in yourself. It's a quote by Charlie Wardo. That quote by Mr. Charlie has stuck with me ever since I read it because the essence of it resonates so much to me. I remember looking back at my life and never really fearing the branch breaking, which most of my fears would be more self-focused, more internal, whether I would be able to fly. I've learned at an early age that the branch shouldn't be relied on to be permanently reliable, and that the only way to fully trust the branch is to first fully trust in myself. If none of that made sense, I'm breaking it down in the rest of the video. The INTJ superpower is commonly known in the community as foresight, which is attributed to being an introverted intuition, or NIDOM, which is the ability that both the INFJ and INTJ both have. But objectively speaking, INTJs tend to accomplish more throughout our lives compared to that of our INFJ counterpart. More as in quantity of accomplishments and not the impact of the accomplishments. History is written through the lens of the victor, so there's no objective way to properly compare impact. And personally, I feel like it's a very douchey move to be like, INTJs have more impact throughout history or on the world because of X, Y, and Z. Because how do we prove that without running into logical fallacies or confirmation bias? This video is going to highlight the superpower of the INTJ that is unique to the INTJ by comparing and contrasting the INTJ to our closely related MBTI counterparts and explain using cognitive functions why it's their superpower. When I use the term superpower, I'm not talking about something that we're good at or something that we're slightly better than another type at. I'm talking about something that makes us exceptional. Simply put, if you're into basketball, why we're the Steph Curry or Caitlin Clark of shooting a basketball? Other people might be good at it, but there's no contest if we were competing with another type. 99% of the time, if we were to compete with another type in our superpower, we'd get first place. The superpower of the INTJ is that we never quit on our dreams. The word never is a very powerful word to use, but I'll address it later in the video when I start talking about pivoting. And if you're familiar with cognitive functions, then it might sound like I'm speaking mostly about extroverted thinking, or TE, which I'm not. There's a very specific way the INTJs handle problems that is different from other high TE users, and there's a very specific approach the INTJs use to solve problems that's different from that of the ENTJ. But let's first define what I mean by never quitting. Quitting in the Webster's dictionary is defined as leaving a person, place, or a thing permanently, and the emphasis is on the word permanent. There's a huge difference between dropping a dream permanently or adjusting your dream based on new data or what you find in reality. Something that's commonly misunderstood about being an NIDOM is that people believe that NI goals are very specific because we're usually able to describe our goals very detailed. In a sense, being an NI-DOM means that we're able to live that reality without it being real, but only by how strong our perception of that dream is. But we're also aware that the details will most likely change because as much as we want to, there are so many things in life that we can't predict and are just out of our control. As an easy example, an INFJ could say that she wants 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. She can easily have 3 kids, but the gender of each child is out of her control unless she goes through one of those expensive procedures that allow her to choose a gender or something. So the NI goal of 3 kids is there, but the details, the gender of each child, is an unknown variable. And instead of saying that the genders are unknown, it's just more fun to choose them to play it out in our fantasies. But what if the INFJ realizes that she only wants 2 kids because she doesn't believe that she can financially support 3 of them? Does that mean she quit on her dreams? No, it just means that her dream has changed. She pivoted her goals based on what is reality. When I hear a person say that they want 4 or 5 kids, the number of kids don't really matter to me. Because what I'm really hearing is that that person just wants to have children. The essence of what's being said is that that person wants to be a parent. And if they typically say more than 2 or 3 kids, that means they want to be a parent of a gaggle of kids. Now, using that same logic, let's apply it to other aspects of our lives, such as our career goals. When an INTJ says that they want to be CEO of a huge corporation like Apple or Amazon, Our fantasy may be focused on these huge prestige companies because it's fun to fantasize about it, but the essence of the goal is to be in a position of authority where we have influence. So if an INTJ at age 18 says that they want to be CEO of Apple, but then at age 30, they're in management level position at an unknown startup company, that doesn't mean their goals have changed. It's just the details of the dream that changed. The INTJ is still on the correct trajectory of becoming a CEO, and that person still might be CEO of Apple one day. INTJs know how to pivot based on reality. In MBTI terms, INTJs pivot based on SE data or a change in our FI value. From an outside perspective, it may seem like the INTJ gave up on our dream and chose something more realistic, when in reality, we're still chasing the same dream. We're just taking a different route. And there are many reasons for choosing a different route, such as suddenly becoming the sole caretaker of a sick family member, changing career for your mental health, believing that your next job is the most efficient path towards your dreams, or just because you're tired and you need a break. But one thing stays constant. We didn't give up on our dream. I avoid using this term as much as I can because I feel like it gets misinterpreted a lot, but the INTJ goals are very abstract. We don't work backwards from exact concrete details. We work backwards from an idea, a concept, or our own perception of reality. And in order to make sense of it or present that concept to someone else to make sure that it's understood, we typically have to compare it to something that's already established in reality. Unhealthy INTJs tend to be unaware of this because they lack comprehension of their FI values or enough concrete SE data, but this step is vital to our success because arrogance and confidence are two sides of the same coin. The difference between confidence and arrogance is that confidence is based on a record of past accomplishments. I know I'm able to do this because I have done something similar in the past successfully. The INTJ has a trail of success to support why we're confident in completing the task that we're dealt. Arrogance is believing our ability to accomplish a task without any relevant previous experience. It's like if a teenager said out of the blue that they can properly drive a car, but they've never driven anything in their entire lives, not even like a golf cart. It makes sense not to trust them because they don't have the experience to do it. So let's go back to why I said they're two sides of the same coin. It's because you have to be arrogant first to become confident. You have to believe that you're able to accomplish something without prior experience, to gain the experience to turn that arrogance into confidence. There are established ways of doing this, and then there are very extreme ways of doing it. A commonly established way is getting an education or a piece of paper that costs way too much money just to say that I might have the capability to do this job. And then there's the extreme example where a person who starts a business with no experience of ever being in charge of anything. Both examples are doing the same thing. Both examples are people taking the initial steps from believing in themselves without experience to becoming the person who is confident and not arrogant. They both lead to a trail of success. But it's only successful if it's working towards a goal. And if the goal is just to try something out, then congrats, you're successful. But the trail of INTJ success usually leads towards a crescendo, which gives us the willpower to keep showing up every day until it's accomplished. It doesn't make sense for an INTJ to give up on our dreams. And I'm going to repeat that to re-emphasize that very bold statement. It doesn't make sense for an INTJ to give up on our dreams. This relates to the very popular anime quote. The difference between a novice and a master is that the master has failed more times than the novice has ever tried. A successful INTJ has failed a lot, more often than we like to admit. We go through the same difficult times where we question our capabilities, feel like we're the dumbest person in the world for chasing a dream, and there are so many times where we just want to give up because we question whether anything is even worth it anymore. But we're also aware that the trajectory of success isn't linear and that there's always a different approach that we haven't tried yet. It doesn't make sense for us to give up unless we tried everything. And even then, even at our lowest point, there's this voice in the back of our head telling us that when faced with a setback, we need to challenge our assumptions. It doesn't make sense to give up on our dreams. A similar mentality is typically shared by the ENTJ, ESTJ, and ISTJs. It's a very TE way of approaching life, but the placement of our cognitive function changes how it manifests in reality. Let's start off focusing on the difference between the ENTJ-INTJ pairing compared to the ESTJ-ISTJ pairing. The NTJs have introverted intuition or extroverted thinking somewhere in their first two slots, whereas the STJs have introverted sensing or extroverted thinking in the first two slots. The primary difference is that both pairings have different perceiving functions, whether it's NI or it's SI. And the easiest, most dumbed down version of what a perceiving function is that it's our own unique interpretation of reality. This is how each SI or NI dom or individual perceives reality. Mom extroverted thinking, she's a tank, dude. She's able to power through any and all obstacles just by sheer willpower. Sometimes our values don't even have to align with what the task is, and our feelings are secondary to completion of the task. All four of our type has that. The difference is our focus. Because the STJs are sensors, their goals tend to be more grounded in reality. When ideas are conceived, it usually has some sort of real-world application or real-world validity to it. A sensor has a difficult time grasping the concept of an idea if there isn't anything tangible that already exists in real life that ties back to it. They could do it, it's just not comfortable for them, or they just think it's a waste of time. As a personal example, I could talk all day about the 4th through 10th dimension, and a sensor will probably fall asleep like halfway through. Because the SI users are so grounded in reality, it's difficult for them to construct a game plan or pivot based on the unknown. Having a high SI means that they have lower NE, which means that thinking outside the box could be very uncomfortable for them. In situations where there's already a system in place or an already established system to implement, they'll do amazing. They'll do better than anyone else. But they'll have a difficult time if forced to think outside the box in high stress situations. To summarize the difference between the STJs and the NTJs, the STJs are goal focused, but their goals tend to be more rooted in reality. Tying this back to the example of the bird and the branch, STJs tend to find a sturdier branch that they can rely on, in addition to relying on their own ability to fly. Now let's compare the INTJs to the ENTJ, and I hope you guys are able to follow along because the differences are so small, but it matters so much. It makes such a huge difference. The way that I view the placement of the first cognitive function is that it's a need or a must for the person, similar to how every human being needs to breathe or eat. It's a must to survive. The ENTJ leads with extroverted thinking, so their need is to accomplish tasks or improve systems. And NI, as their second function, makes sure that they're spending time wisely by working on only relevant tasks towards a singular goal. The INTJ leads with NI, so all of our energy is coming up with an ideal plan, and our secondary extroverted thinking is there to help us implement that plan and make our goal into reality. So for the ENTJ, their goals will change based on whatever task or system that they feel needs to be improved. Since they have introverted feeling as their lowest function, their values aren't as invested in a task, so it could change easier compared to the INTJ. And because the ENTJs have third slot extroverted sensing, there's a performative aspect to their goals where others' perception has more influence in what they value. Whereas for the INTJ, our goals, once aligned with our third slot introverted feeling, remains constant unless there's a drastic change in our FI value. And because we're more attuned with our FI values, we know our goals is really what we want to invest our time and effort to because we want to accomplish it. Being FE blind and having fourth slot extroverted sensing means that we're less influenced by the outward perception, which leads to this laser focused achiever stereotype of an INTJ. That's the difference between the two internally, but from an outside perspective, we may look exactly the same. And, to be honest, the four of us, the STJs and the NTJs, we might look the same from the outside if you never actually have the opportunity to ask our motive. And I'm okay with that because I appreciate the get shit done attitude of a high TE user. Let's quickly summarize this video because I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be, and this video wasn't meant to be a deep dive. The INTJ will never give up on our dreams. It doesn't make sense to give up because times are tough. It doesn't make sense to give up if we haven't tried everything yet. It doesn't make sense to give up because we've already failed 100 times. Because what if on the next try, we end up succeeding. What if there's another approach that we haven't even considered yet? We can't give up at that point because we haven't tried everything. And what if we know that these tough times are not permanent and are going to be followed by a lifetime of joy and happiness? At a certain point in an INTJ's life, once we pass the threshold from arrogance to confidence, the strength of the branch doesn't matter anymore. Because at that point in an INTJ's life, the INTJ would trust in our own ability to fly. And that's all for this video, folks. You know, I originally tried making a in-car video for this. You know, one of those like MBTI content creators that put their camera on their dashboard and just kind of talk off the dome. I tried that so hard. I think I spent like 2 hours trying to make a video, just talking off just what I think about why INTJs are successful, and I couldn't do it. And I always sees a more optimal way to approach a question. And every time I said one sentence, it led to another sentence where I was just like, does this even align, or am I like tangenting at this point? It's really interesting because I was recently around my ESFP and ENTJ friend, and then I asked him this question, what makes us different? My ESFP friend, he doesn't understand the concept of never giving up. For him, it's never giving up until he doesn't feel like working anymore. And for my ENTJ friend, it doesn't make sense for him either, but the difference that I realized from having that conversation with him was that he's very task focused, whereas for me, it still comes from an internal source. It still has to align with what I really want to do. And for him, it seems like he just picks and chooses something, and then once he chooses it, he's done with it. For an INTJ, like FI still plays a part, especially once you become more healthy. It influences what my NI is. It's really interesting, and I talked to my ISTJ friend, and it doesn't make sense for her. She hates engaging with extrovert intuition. It's really funny, honestly. I'm done rambling now, so let's end this video. Thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for all the support. Thank you. Bye.